Here's John McCain. Well, I mean, I don't know that anybody knows more about the real John McCain than you do. But here's John McCain desperately seeking someone else to believe that John McCain was right about Iraq. Here it is.
Do you stand by those comments, Senator Hagel?
Well, Senator, I stand by them because I made them. And
were you right? Were you correct in your assessment?
Well, I would defer to the judgment of history to put that out. But
the committee deserves your judgment as to whether you were right or wrong about the surge.
I'll explain why I made those comments. And
I want to know if you were right or wrong. That's a direct question. I expect a direct answer.
The surge assisted in the objective. But if we review the record a little bit.
Will you please answer the question? Were you correct or incorrect when you said that the surge would be the most dangerous foreign policy blunder in this country since Vietnam? Were you correct or incorrect? Yes or no?
My reference to the surge being the most dangerous.
Senator Hagel? The question is, were you right or wrong? That's a pretty straightforward question.
Well,
I would like to answer whether you were right or wrong, and then you are free to elaborate.
Well, I'm not going to give you a yes or no answer on a lot of things.
Show that you refuse to answer that question. Now, please go ahead.
Well, if you would like me to explain why.
I actually would like an answer. Yes or no?
Well, I'm not going to give you a yes or no. I think it's far more complicated than that. As I've already said, my answer is I'll defer that judgment to history. As to the comment I made about the most dangerous foreign policy decision since Vietnam was about not just the surge, but the overall war of choice going into Iraq. That particular decision that was made on the surge, but more to the point, our war in Iraq, I think was the most fundamentally bad, dangerous decision since Vietnam.
Now, I mean, I think his point is well taken there. He could have said it far more eloquently. He could have said, no, in retrospect, that was the second biggest mistake we made. The first one was Iraq, and then the second one was compounding the issue there and keeping us in there longer than necessary. But tell me the background. You know John McCain, not personally, but you wrote the book.
He called me unstable and called me a known liar. So it's almost like we're buddies.
It's close. Cliff wrote the book, The Real McCain, back in the day. So give us some background on Hagel and McCain.
Well, a few quick things. First of all, that's classic McCain. That's the bully. That's the guy I wrote about in my book who with the side of him, the anger that drives John McCain more than anything else, revenge. And I'll get to that in 2 seconds, why he needs revenge against Hagel, what led him to call his wife the "see you next Tuesday." Everybody can figure that one out, I'm sure. Led him to physically assault a congressman, from his own delegation after taunting the guy. Led him to throw all sorts of four-letter insults at John Cornyn, Chuck Grassley, Pete Domenici. Not to say that I wouldn't like to do that sometimes.
Right.
But this man was a senator on the floor and tried to physically threaten people. This is who he is. And with Hagel, it fits that pattern perfectly because Hagel and McCain actually were once good buddies when McCain was more sane before he went the neocon route and got in with those guys. McCain was once a guy who actually called for us to pull out of it's not coming to me. I'm losing my mind. But Lebanon, sorry, Libya kept popping in. Called for us to pull out of Lebanon in 1983 after the barracks attack. He was a guy who was not a neocon of any sort. He was much more like Hagel and other people who had been to wars and were more careful about it. He went total neocon in the late 90s for a variety of reasons, dealing with his party, getting the nomination, who was advising him, and other things like that. But to make a long story short, he and Hagel had been friends, and so in 2000, as both guys that were injured in war, in 2000 when McCain ran, Hagel was only one of 4 senators that endorsed John McCain over George W. Bush. Most of the Senate hated McCain because of his personality and went with Bush. But what happened is, as Hagel started coming out against the war, and McCain went in the opposite direction and said, surge, surge, surge. And by the way, for anybody listening, it was the Sunni awakening and a variety of other things, not the surge, which led to over over 1,000 more American troops dying, and untold other horrors over there. But as Hagel started to question the very premise of the war, which is something that John McCain can't allow to happen, because then he would have to admit that he pushed for us to go into a war that was completely ill thought out, was completely idiotic, and frankly, pretty close to being a war crime, if not one. And so Hagel came out very publicly around 2006, 2007, and they really broke in a serious way. And McCain started to hate him after that. And Hagel, in the end, Hagel's wife endorsed Obama in 2008. Hagel just sort of stayed neutral but refused to endorse McCain. It's pretty clear whose side Hagel was on. So this is now all personal, is what people should know. It's well beyond. It's that Hagel questioned McCain's judgment, and nobody ever questions McCain's judgment on Iraq without personally saying, "I'm questioning McCain's judgment." He just said, "I'm questioning the justification for having done this. That we made a terrible mistake." Hagel actually did support the war with his vote at the time, but was sort of one of these guys that was sort of hesitant, and I think felt terrible when he saw how it turned out. To give him some credit, and I'm not saying Hagel's perfect, because on a whole number of issues, I think he's terrible. But I think on this, as someone who had been to war and understands what that's like, he came to realize an error he made and wanted to speak out about it even before most Democrats were. And to McCain, that was a direct personal challenge to King McCain. And so, and nobody does that. And then when his wife sort of made it obvious, Hagel's wife, that they were supporting Obama in 2008 over him, I mean, of course, that was it.
Right. Nobody puts McCain in the corner.